I said in Sunday school, I told you all, what I thought I was going to be preaching ended up being the Sunday school lesson. And God has given me something else. I sometimes think to myself as I'm preaching some of these things that you all are sitting back there and thinking, he must really think we're bad. Or who does he think he's talking to? A bunch of lost people? And I've told you this before and I'm going to tell you again. I assure you, I try my best to only deliver what God gives me to deliver. What I'm going to give to you this morning was written directly to a church. So, I don't think I'm talking to a bunch of bad people. I believe I'm talking to a church. This is in the book of Revelation in chapter 3. And I've kind of got, I don't know exactly how God's going to do this yet, but I've kind of got 5 mini-sermons. And 5 points I need to address. Exactly how, I don't know. We just trust the Lord to bring it across the way He's bringing it across. Revelation chapter 3, I'm going to break in at verse 15. And just to reiterate, this is written to a church, the church of Laodicea. But I want you to know that. It's not written to lost people. It's not written to sinners. It's not written to people who are out in the world doing all kinds of evil things. It's written to a church. Everything that is written to this church applies to all churches down through the ages, because God is the same yesterday, today, and forever. He doesn't change. What He wouldn't tolerate then, He won't tolerate now. You know all that stuff. I'm not going to rehash all of it. I just want to make this point very clear. And what I want more than anything else is for you to receive what it is that God has for you, and not only to receive it, but to apply it. Revelation chapter 3, verse 15. I know thy works, that thou art neither cold nor hot. I would thou wert cold or hot. So then, because thou art lukewarm and neither cold nor hot, I will spew thee out of my mouth. I'm going to stop right there. I got a few things to say, and then we're going to go on. He says, I know your works. And you go back and get the original language and look at everything that's tied in there and what that means. It says, I know your effort. I know what you put into it. I know how much of yourself you give. I know what you're doing for me. When he says, I know your works, that speaks of effort and a willingness and a give and a desire. He says, I know what you're giving. I know what you're doing. I know how much your heart is in it, basically, is what he's saying. He said, I know your works. And what I know about your works is that you're neither cold nor hot. You ain't on fire for me. You ain't really out there giving it all that you could. You're not giving all that you got. Maybe you're not a block of ice. Maybe you're not exactly not doing anything. But what he's saying is, I know what you really are giving. You might be giving some, but you're not giving all. You might be giving some, but you're not giving everything that you could give. You think you're doing enough to get by. You think you're pleasing me by doing the things that you are doing, but you're not giving everything that you could give. And basically, in my very own words, I'm going to just say it the way that I know I understand and the way that I believe that you understand. You're not on fire for me. And that's what I want. I want you to be on fire for me. And I've said this before, and I'm going to say it again and try to keep moving. It's a whole lot better that you were cold than that you were somewhere in between.
Right.
How can I say that? Because Christ said that.
Right.
He said, I wish you were either hot or cold. Either be on fire for me or don't pretend to be something you ain't. Either be on fire for me or don't just play around with me. Either be on fire for me or admit that you're not. Because if you're somewhere in between, I'm going to spit you out. And again, I want you to understand. I'm not talking to lost people. I know I'm not talking to lost people. I'm talking to Christians, and I'm going to tell you something. Maybe this will help you out a little bit. I'm going to confess something to you. There was a time I was lukewarm. I went to church. I had a lot of jobs in the church. I did a lot of stuff. I was always busy. But you know what I was doing it for? Because I wanted to do it. I liked to do it. I was into it. I wasn't doing it because I was on fire for God. I wasn't doing it because it would win souls. I wasn't doing it because it was what God had called me to do. I was doing it because I wanted to do it. And you know, when you do it because you want to do it, that's lukewarm. And if we get to that point and we stay at that point and we don't recognize that and we don't realize that, He said, I'll spit you out. I'm going to say this. And I'm going to move on. Examine yourself. Why are you doing what you're doing? Think really hard about it. Why are you doing what it is that you're doing? And think about this while you're thinking about that. Why are you not doing what you know you should be doing? Think about it. Really think about it. I talked in Sunday school a little bit about the seriousness of serving God. And I can't get that off my mind over the last couple of weeks. Serving God is a very serious thing. We talked in Sunday school about if you don't forgive, God won't forgive you. If you're not forgiven, can you enter heaven? Now we're listening to what Christ is saying here. If you ain't hot or cold, I'm going to spit you out. That's serious. It's very serious. And we better understand that. Just because maybe you said the prayer one day, just because you got saved, just because you went to Sunday school as a child, just because you come to church now, don't mean you're locked in. He said, not I. He said, if you ain't hot or you ain't cold, I'm going to spit you out. And that's serious. That's right. Again, what He said, in my words, so that there is no doubt. I know how much effort you put into this. Just what you think is enough. We go on our jobs, and we bust our backs. And we do everything we can to please the boss. We do everything we can to look good. We do everything we can to hold on to our job. And we know if we don't work up to a certain standard and a certain par, we may lose our job. We could be fired or let go, whatever. I'm going to tell you something. Don't think God can't let you go.
That's right. Amen.
I know it's popular and it's easy to believe that because I said the prayer and I go to church and I do this and I do that, I got it sewed up. No, you don't. I just read you what Jesus said. If you ain't hot or cold, I'll spit you out.
That's right.
That's pretty plain and to the point. And the church needs to stop and understand and realize you ain't just going to skate through the pearly gate. Something is required of you. And if you ain't living up to the requirements, I can take you to verse after verse after verse after verse where He says, God will not forgive you, or I will spew you out, or I will blot out your name. I can show you in the Word. Get it out of your head that you got it made.
That's right.
We got to keep going. I got too much to get to. All I can ask you to do, tuck that away in your heart. Meditate on it. Think about it. Understand it. Read this Word. Let it speak to you. And understand what God is expecting of you. He goes on, verse 17. Because thou sayest, I am rich and increase with goods and have need of nothing. And knowest not that thou art wretched and miserable and poor and blind and naked. I'm going to stop there. Make a couple points. You say, I'm good. I'm doing all right. I go to church, at least most Sunday mornings. I don't need anything else. You may not use these words, but listen, this is your thoughts, this is your heart, this is your attitude. That's all I have to do. And then, we're going to the old reliable standby. God understands if I stay home with the family then. God understands if I take my fishing rod and go down to the lake. God understands if I go do this or I go do that. You're exactly like these people. You say, I got everything, I don't need nothing else. I got all of God I need, I got all of God I want, and I don't need anything else, and you don't even realize how wretched you are. You're poor, and you're blind, and you're naked. That's not my words. That's God's words. We've gotten to this place where we're just comfortable with living a haphazard Christian life and doing just whatever we want to do, whatever makes us happy. And we made our own God in an image that allows us to do exactly what we want to do. We have this God in our hearts and in our minds that lets me just show up when I want to show up, lets me put out just as much effort as I want to put out, and then go and do my own thing and think that I'm all right. That's the kind of God that we're serving today. And yes, some of us sitting here are like that too. And maybe not completely like that, but we better keep on top of our own selves, because it's easy for these things to start to slip in. And I'm going to tell you something. I'm the pastor of the church, and I'm here. I haven't missed a Sunday since I started coming here. So God understands if I just slack off. It's easy to do that.
That's right.
You got to stay on top of yourself. You got to keep examining yourself. And those of us who are sitting here, yes, you may be good Christian. You may love the Lord. But if you're not careful, you can fall into some of this stuff.
That's right. Amen.
Right.
Where are all those good, strong Christians who love the Lord, who once sat in these pews?
Mm-hmm.
If it can happen to them, it can happen to you if you ain't on top of it.
That's right.
Don't think it can't, because it can. If you're not careful and you're not on guard and you're not watching and you don't continually examine yourself. Listen, what he says here, I got to read this again and go on. Because you say, I'm rich and increased with goods and have need of nothing, and you don't even know that you're wretched and miserable and poor and blind and naked. You need to stop and understand you ain't got it made. You ain't got it sewed up. You show up here and you sit and you listen to the preaching. And how many times, I'll put it in the vernacular we use and understand. How many times have I stepped on your toes? Mm-hmm. And you said, ouch. And then you went out and bought steel-toed boots. Instead of doing what God told you to do.
Right.
And there are people sitting here that applies to.
Mm-hmm.
How do I know? Because the Spirit is telling me what to say.
That's right.
You're sitting here and God has told you and told you and told you and told you, and you continue in the same path that you were walking in. It's like I said, God got on you, but you went out and you got a pair of steel-toed boots, and now you can't step on your toes anymore. And so you quit stepping on your toes. Maybe you took a hickory stick to your backside, but you just went out and got a pillow and stuck it down your pants. Whatever analogy you want to use, you're doing whatever you can to ease your conscience and not have to listen to what it is that God is saying. You better start listening to what it is that God is saying.
That's right.
Man.
But you're awful hard. You ain't got very many people here now, and if you keep it up like that, they're all going to leave.
That's right.
I got to do what God tells me to do.
Amen.
It ain't about how many people are sitting here.
That's right.
That's right.
If there was one sitting here and God told me to say it, and I knew they would leave because I said it, I would still say it.
That's right.
Your soul is in the balance. What do you mean my soul's in the balance? I'm already saved. Yeah, but if you ain't hot or cold, it's going to spit you out.
That's right.
That's right.
And you can keep going and read in Revelation and read to all these churches. There's a lot of other issues that will get you kicked out. There's a lot of other issues that are going to cause you problems. You better stop and realize, and I know you're tired of it. Too bad.
That's right.
It's a serious thing to fall into the hands of a living God.
That's right.
Do you understand that? He ain't the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man. He ain't Grandpa in the rocking chair. Yes, he is a God of love. You know what else? He's a God of wrath.
Amen. That's right. Amen.
He's a God that cannot abide disobedience and sin. Mm-hmm. He's a God that will not put up with foolishness. He's a God that won't put up with somebody playing around. And we better understand that. Listen, you go ahead. You enjoy your life here on earth. Go out and have your pleasures, your entertainments, the things that make you happy. You enjoy it as much as you can, because if that's what matters to you, eternity is going to be miserable for you.
That's right.
So you better enjoy it now. You better make a decision which matters more to you. Your pleasures and your entertainment and things like that here, or the good later. You got to make a choice. You got to make a decision. You mean if I'm going to serve God wholeheartedly and be all fired up and sold out to God, I can't have fun? No, that's not what I'm saying. But God must be first.
That's right.
He must be first. And you can believe me or not believe me or whatever you want to think, but some of the most fun I've ever had has been in church.
Amen.
There's a lot of outdoor stuff I like to do, different things I enjoy and have fun doing and all. But the most joyous times I've ever had have been in the house of God. He said, because you think you got it all and you don't know how bad off you really are, I counsel thee to buy of me gold tried in the fire, that thou mayest be rich, and white raiment, that thou mayest be clothed, and that the shame of thy nakedness do not appear. And anoint thine eyes with eye salve, that thou mayest see. There's so much in this one verse, there's no way I can get to it all. I've just got to give you, my mind goes so many places, but I just got to give you what God has given me to give you. Because you're in this state, and you think you're okay, and you think it's all right, and you think you got it all, and you don't know that you really ain't, and you don't know that you're blind, and you're naked, and you're wretched. You need to get something from God. He said, I counsel you. You know what that word means? I advise you. I don't know about your parents when you were growing up, or, teachers or anything like that, but I had a teacher once. When he said, I advise you to stop it, you stopped it, because you knew he meant business. When God says, I advise you to do something, he means business. He said, I counsel you, I advise you to get the things you need from me. You can't get them from the world. You can't get them from your entertainment and those sort of things. You can't get them by living a haphazard Christian life. You can't get them by being lukewarm. You can't get them by just showing up once in a while. You can't get them by being a part-time Christian. You can't get them by just saying the right words. You can't get them by doing this and doing that and doing everything else. There's only one place you can get them. You have to buy them from God. You mean God's going to charge me for them? In a manner of speaking, yes. To buy something means there's a cost associated with it. There is a cost to being the kind of Christian that God has called you to be. It'll cost you some of your time you wanted to spend doing something else. It'll cost you some pleasures and joys that this flesh wants to do. It will cost you something. Sometimes you're going to have to do stuff when you don't feel like doing it, when you don't want to do it. But you got to do it anyway. There is a cost associated. But what he's saying is, I advise you to pay that cost and get what's important and get what you need and get what is necessary. He said, I counsel you to buy me gold tried in the fire, that thou mayest be rich, and white raiment, that you can be clothed. Listen, that white raiment, I got to touch on this just real quick. He said when he comes to get his bride, they have to be dressed in that white raiment, and there can't be one spot on it. Not one spot. Not one blemish. Not one wrinkle. Can't be a pulled thread. Nothing. It has to be perfect. And there's only one way to get that. And there's only one place to get that. And again, there's so much just in this one verse. I could preach 20 sermons on it. But here's what God wants me to tell you. There's some stuff you need. And the only place to get it is from God. And the one part of that. First, you need to be able to see your need. You need that eye salve, that you can see your need. We have blinded ourselves. We have clouded our vision. We need to clear our vision. We need to open our eyes and really realize and see. Maybe what he's saying ain't all that far-fetched. Maybe that is true. Maybe I'm not where I should be with God. Maybe I'm not living this life the way I'm supposed to live this life. Maybe I'm not sold out to God the way I'm supposed to be sold out to God. Maybe it's true. In order to see that, you've got to get that eye set from God. You've got to allow God to open